So, Anthony,
Tommy.
I feel like there's an unspoken profession in the world where it's not really promoted in institutions, education. During your time in school, university, your parents didn't speak about it, your friends didn't speak about it. Everyone tells you be a doctor, be a lawyer, blah blah blah. But there's one unspoken profession that no one bats an eye on. Is one of the easiest portals to 67 figures, but no one talks about it.
Really? I thought we all had to be doctors, accountants.
Nah, man. I ain't trying to be
Start
80K.
your own business.
I'm not trying to be $80,000 fucking in debt, finish a 5-year degree. I ain't trying to do that, bro.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But it's an unspoken career profession. So I'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah.
I'd love to drop the bomb of what profession it is. But before we even get there,
Sure.
how you going, bro?
Good.
How you
I'm
doing?
good, man? I'm good. It's been a little while.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah.
What's been happening with you, man? How's the year?
Oh, my year's been crazy. It's been a real steep learning curve. I mean, I've had a professional life for, I'd say, coming up to 10 years now. Tried lots of different shit. And you're talking about some of those professions. I've been there and done that, and I've had to learn the hard way. But yeah, this has been really good, a real step change, and I feel like a lot of personal and professional growth, big time. And yeah, I mean, it's just about, it's all upside from here. But you got to really still got to keep that, be true to yourself and have that real hunger that fuels the fire.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And that's just for the audience to give you some context. So me and Anthony basically started like getting to know each other through the workplace, right? Both of us are both in technology, the technology sector.
We were like Arnie and Danny DeVito.
Yeah, well,
you're twins.
Well, you're Danny.
Nah, I'm Arnie and you're Danny.
No,
Yeah.
you're DeVito. Let's all be honest here, bro. The size speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Come on.
What do you mean, bro?
Nah, but like, look, bro, like, yeah, to give the audience some context, man. Like, we started in the technology sector. This guy was like pretty much like an older brother to me. Like me and him used to run a Mach in terms of just talking to customers, planning things out, scheming. How do we engage? How do we add value to the business? How do we do all this? And we'll get into, I guess, a little bit more about that. But speaking about your year and some of the things you've done so far, like it just leads me to the question, man, or like the statement. Tell us about your background and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, cool. Maybe I'll start. I'll try and be as brief as I can be, and hopefully some of your audience can connect to, I guess, my personal story. So background, like I was born in Australia. My parents are Chinese Vietnamese, or parents were born in Vietnam. Migrants from the war, and we had a small family business in Melbourne, and I lived upstairs, and I was selling to customers from the age of 12. Like, that's what I tell everybody. I didn't realize I was selling, but customer service, we were selling jewelry tools, always serving customers. And one of the things was when I was about 12 or 14, I asked my parents, what's so good about running a business? And they're like, you got to always be running your own thing, your commerce, your own business. So, it's typical sort of like Asian upbringing, did okay at uni, go to university. I did a Bachelor of Commerce at Monash. Didn't know which to pick, so I did accounting and majored in accounting and finance. First job out of uni was accounting, audit.
Yeah.
Hated my life.
Ultimate Asian.
Lowest of the low, right?
Ultimate Asian right there. Bro.
Had the whole look as well, suit and tie, the hair and everything.
Yeah.
And then, that was, I think work didn't keep me on. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to finance. I went to a grad program at a bank. And then, again, still continuing that sort of pathway. And then there was a year, I think it was 3 or 4 years into my time at NAB. I don't know if I can mention where employers' names and stuff like that or not. But anyway, I looked around. One really big wake-up call was I looked around. I was dragging my feet around the office. And I was like, this work ain't for me. And I actually had one of my managers who I'm good mates with and still keep in touch with. He's like, this is not for you. You're smart, you're capable, but this is not for you. Like, I had to, I looked around, people didn't inspire me. People, like, engaging with people around the workplace. I've always tried to have fun with people, which I really enjoy. But the work itself, and in terms of the profession, wasn't for me. And then I went to a tech conference, and that woke me up. And I was like, holy shit, a monkey can do my job. A robot's going to replace what I'm going to do. I got to get into tech, basically. But even before that, I recognized that I wanted to do sales. And I didn't realize the long route was when I started in accounting. Accounting, after 10 or 15 years, you eventually become a partner, right? In banking, you become a banker, ultimately, especially what I was doing, something called corporate or institutional banking. I didn't realize that 10 or 15 years later, you're actually a salesperson with a sales target.
Yeah.
But no one talks about it. No one tells you that. In university, there's no uni degree on sales. You don't even, when we're in like student societies, you get almost like brainwashed and targeted. Hey, you got to go join Big Four accounting, Big Four bank, and this and that. And also keep in mind, I think there's a little bit of Asian upbringing to do with this as well. It's like, because our families come from next to nothing, you either become super entrepreneurial, which we see a lot of people in our community can be themselves, or you get down, the path of least resistance. Really low risk paths which pay really well. Because it's like my dad, like his first job in Australia was a cleaner. My mum was working the family grocery shop. They only know 30 at the time, like probably 20, 30, like 20 years ago, 20, 30, 40 grand is a lot of money to them.
Yeah.
But I was just actually talking to my sister a couple of weeks ago. I was like, you realize you and me now, we earn more money than mum and dad ever imagined combined. Like, we know a new world. And then look, it's I think it's actually up to, brothers and sisters in our community to actually lift each other up and open each other's eyes to show what's possible, in my humble opinion. So anyway, we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but yeah, I work in tech sales now. So I realized I was great at interacting with people. I used to set up like a Melbourne Cup event. It was just Melbourne Cup the other day. I had clients when I was at NAB saying, aren't you in sales? And I was like, no, I'm just the guy that supports the sales guy. I'm just the analyst.
Yeah.
Good old analyst with a suit and tie, shiny shoes. And then, I went to a dinner with we were just talking about private equity before, but the partner, private equity partner, or managing director and his wife invited myself and a banker to go to dinner. I could pick up on the tiniest things, like where his shirt was from. And he was like, holy shit, like, how'd you bloody pick that out? Yeah. And it's just, I realized, like, having awareness and EQ, how to interact with people, how do you engage with people, how do you communicate, how do you listen, how do you talk? That's all salespeople. Like, that's the biggest thing I've noticed this year. I would say I'm essentially rewarded or paid to communicate. That's my job.
100%. I feel like, and it's interesting, right? Because that leads us, and I think we've already pretty much dropped the bomb to the audience of what it is that we're talking about. And the unspoken career profession is sales. Now, not a lot of people have heard of. A lot of young people, especially technology sales, they think sales is the snake oil salesman, bloke that comes up, knocks on your door or some shit like that, or like real estate or some sleazy motherfucker trying to sell you something and try to take your money, all that kind of stuff, right? But in essence, you it was interesting when you mentioned high EQ, picking things out, knowing what's important to them, and then how do you make their lives easier, basically, and you get paid to communicate that, right? So if we were to just take a step back and just to, from a very high level, what is sales? What is sales to you? How would you explain sales to someone who's never heard of or who isn't aware of this profession?
That's a really, really good question. Sales to me is really helping somebody and influencing them solve their problem. If we take a bit more of a bigger picture or macro view, this world spins around because of sales. There's always someone buying something, or someone always selling something. There's always a problem somewhere that needs some sort of solution, right? Overarching, right? That's how I personally view sales. then you kind of think about, well, what is it that you can buy or sell? You know, there's obviously selling in every sort of industry. A big part, I'd say, is in every business, there's sales. Without sales, there's no business, right? I think sometimes
100%.
people forget that.
Yeah.
Whether you're running your own business, whether you're the CEO, or even if, to be honest, even if you're a project person or operations or the CFO, you're always selling because you have to influence people to achieve a certain outcome. It could be your outcome, could be their outcome. It goes back to, just to flesh out more my definition of communication is like, how do you influence somebody to achieve maybe a common goal or any sort of goal? And that takes a lot of experience. I wouldn't say a lot of experience. It takes a lot of raw talent. Experience and coaching can go a long, long way, and anybody can be good at it. In my opinion, anyone can be doing it.
100%, man. I feel like that's a great definition of sales, right? For me, it's like sales is essentially the art of understanding what's important to someone and how do you add value to them. That's it. That's all it is. It's basically, when we were talking a little bit over the phone before, it's basically, you're getting paid to communicate value to someone, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of businesses, there's different departments, obviously. When you look at the traditional degrees, it's always going to be HR. Like if you did a commerce degree, right? You major in HR, you major in marketing, you major in finance, you major in international business or whatnot. But it's really shocking how sales isn't even considered as a career option. It's like we always have this joke amongst every salesperson, where it's like you don't choose sales. You typically just fall into the profession itself, right? You kind of come across someone where someone's like, to me, like how I came across it was, recruiter hit me up from the tech firm, and then they're like, "Oh, you want to do this role?" And I was like, and then it was always a funny scenario, man. Like so I'll give you some context. It was like, they hit me up, and mind you, I was like 20, 21. Yeah. I was working like for a job like in another tech company, but I didn't know what sales was. I was in marketing. I was getting like 40K, no, actually 30K, right? 30K on a scholarship program. And then
good money back then.
Good money back then. 30K, 60 hours, bro. I'll take it. I'll take it any day. I learned a lot. And I hated my life though, right? Yeah. Wear a suit and tie and shit. I don't know, in marketing even. So then the recruiter hits me up, and they're like, "Oh, you're interested in a sales role?" Like, I don't know what sales is, but anything better than this place. Anything better than me staying here. And then, went through the interview process. And then when it came down to negotiating salary, mind you, like, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I don't know shit about negotiation. I don't know nothing. I just want a better opportunity. They asked me, "What's your salary expectation?" This is on email. I reply, like 40K. 40K, you know what I mean? 40K, and then I was like, oh, and then 2 weeks passed by, passed the interview, processing the contract now, and then they're gonna give me a call. And I was like, you know what? I had this internal dialogue for two weeks. I was like, you know what? I think I bargained too low. I gotta negotiate. I'm gonna try this for 45. I'm trying for 45K. I'm trying for 45K. Yeah. And then I was preparing all day. I was getting anxiety. Like, these are the data points. This is what I've researched so far. Like, I think this 45. Recruiter calls me up. Like, hey, congrats. Here's the contract. We're going to break it down for you right now. Right? Not going to give the figures, but it's like twice the amount, plus a sign-on bonus, plus equity, plus free health insurance. I've never seen something like this. I was like, 45. Yeah. No, I'll take it, right? Are they happy? They're like, you happy with it? I was like, yeah, I'll take it right now. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And mine to this day, the recruiter still makes fun of me, man. They're like, man, when you sent that email, the whole team just came around on my screen and just looked down and just laughed at you, man. Now I'm just known as a kid, but
it's just cute.
It's cute. But like, sales definitely has changed my life.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen a profession, like, I never came across a profession where, and we always make a joke about it, but like, I've never seen a profession where it's like, you get paid up to 6 to 7 figures, basically, just to speak, just to talk.
Sorry, not 7 figures, but 7 figures is possible. Clearly you can clear 6 figures easily.
6 figures on a very good year. Yeah. 7 figures if you got an astronomical deal that you just signed on some businesses, right? So it's like, man, coming through that, like a career option that I never came across, I've never spoken to, never found out about. Parents always denounce sales, always like, what is sales? What the hell are you doing? Well, my parents still ask me, what is sales? I don't, like, you try to explain to them, they're just like, oh, like, it just doesn't sound prestigious.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a place where, a job where, you know, work-life balance is good. You can work after hours if you want. It's basically a job where it rewards you for the work that you put in. It's not just a fixed salary that you're in there and you're expected to work 90 hours or something like that, right? It's like the more work that you put in, the more money you get at the end of it because of commission now of that. So I've never seen a career where you get to earn that amount and basically just get to speak and just meet people and build a good rapport. And just add value, right? So it kind of leads me to a long, like, that was a long statement, but back to the question, right? Is like,
we've got a few threads there.
But like, let's talk about sales as a viable career option. Like, let's talk about, you know, what we talked about. What is sales? We talked about, you know, describing the lifestyle of like, you know, what it is, what stuff someone would do. But let's jot down, you know, what type of businesses and industry need salespeople.
Okay. You want to talk about industries? Okay, that's a really good one.
Because, you know, there's retail sales.
There's retail sales.
Real estate sales, but like, what industries usually, you know, that we kind of, because tech is one, right? But maybe some people don't want to do tech.
Yes, maybe some people don't want to do tech. I've heard of medical device, anything in the health sort of medical health space, for sure, is really lucrative. Like when you're selling, you know, X-ray machines, could you imagine doing that? I hear a lot of physios, they switch from. As an example, they switch from, I actually don't want to be a physio day to day, but I understand stuff about the body or whatever. I mean, you could be a mortgage broker. Broker means sales, for example. So anything property related, whether it's the loan on the property or you're selling property. So we can talk about different industries. A very clear thing to distinguish, though, is are you selling a product or are you selling a service? You need to be really mindful of that, because the way you sell and the sales cycle, so when I say sales cycle, from, you know, all the stages from prospecting through to closing, and then what happens after closing, is very different for the way you present, position, frame a product versus services, like which is what I have to do now, is like really deeply strategic consultative sales, which is different, right? And that's been, you know, it's a steep learning curve for me transitioning out of, you know, where we were at the same workplace before, from essentially product to services. So that's definitely a thing to think about. Are you selling a car? You know, car salespeople can actually, if you're selling like Mercedes and Renault and stuff, you can make some decent money. But I mean, we've touched on, you know, I would say the top 3 to 5% of any salesperson in any industry make bloody good cash, regardless of industry. So if you're the top in that industry, then you'll easily clear sort of 6 figures. For sure. But there was a few caveats I do want to add, instead of, just in case all of a sudden we're getting 20,000 of your audience.
Like, I'm in sales now, I hate my life, fuck me, you know what I mean?
There's also almost like a boring aspect to it. Like there's some days where you're like, well, today, like, it was particularly challenging for me, but I'm like, fuck, sometimes I feel like I'm a personal assistant for people, trying to herd cats. Somebody was saying at work today, herding cats is actually quite hard to herd cats, but like trying to get the right stakeholders in the right room, physical or virtual room, takes a lot of work, and it's boring. There's a side of sales is glamorous. Yeah, you can get a new car, maybe you can buy, you know, new property, you buy a gift for your parents or holiday or whatever. But there's also the stuff like the day-to-day where it's like you've got a sales target. When I say sales target, I mean you have a revenue target. You have to bring in $500K or $5 million that year or that quarter.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes, and it is a roller coaster, sometimes you're like, fuck, you know, my top 3 or top 2 customers have, you know, left me for dead. Where do I go find some other money? Some other revenue? So those are some things I think about. One really clear thing, you're fleshing out the detail that I was then thinking about, is what people don't think about in sales. Instead of sometimes worrying about your target, think of it as you're running your own business.
Exactly.
Like, And you are sometimes we used to hear, oh, salespeople are coin operated, but you hunt, yeah, you eat what you kill.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a thing to remind yourself. Let's say you have a rough year and you're like, you know what, I'm just happy to just hit 60 or 70% of my target. I maybe need to look after my mental health or look after a family member and stuff. Or maybe you just switch out of sales to do a different type of sales role. There are sales roles that aren't quota carrying, so no revenue or no sales target, right?
Yeah.
You know, for example, customer success managers or relationship managers or account managers is used interchangeably
Yep.
in the market. But it's just, yeah, thinking about those sort of things.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've
Yeah.
kind of digressed from your question, but I just wanted to touch on a few points
Yeah,
to
no,
help our
100%. There's
audience understand.
like regardless of any industry, right? Like there are salespeople. End of the day, if you got a product, you got a salesperson. You got a service, even though it's maybe not even titled as a sales executive or sales development representative, account, whatever it is, consultant is still a sales, right? And then
Yeah.
they all varies depending on compensation structure as well. But yeah, just to touch, you mentioned there's also different roles where it's customer facing. I think they sales is customer facing, and there's different customer facing roles as well. Like you mentioned, you touched on customer success manager, and then in our world there's partner managers. But like we'll get into, I guess, the career progression or career journey of a salesperson, where they can go linear, non-linear, or laterally move, right? So we can go to that later. But you mentioned salespeople are coin operated, but like at the end of the day, like it's important to then think about give the audience an idea of what's the earning potential. I know we said 6 to 7 figures, whatever, right? But let's break down the typical structure of how a salesperson is compensated.
Yeah. Before we go into this detail, I do want to point out you might not start on 6 figures.
Yes,
You
100%.
might be starting on 40-50 grand, right? And you might get comms of 20 or 30 grand. That might be your very first job. But I do want to encourage everybody, anyone I mentor and even like this audience, it's like always be thinking big. You need to keep thinking big because like having an abundance mindset is bloody fucking important, critical. Like, and it's hard. It's a slippery slope. Sometimes you shift from abundance to scarcity, and you're like, oh shit, I'm worried about 5 or 10 grand here. But like one of my mentees, I was telling him the other day actually, it's like, man, if you're going to change jobs, think about what's the financial benefit or upside. Are you going to get 30 or 50 grand? You should be thinking about 100 grand. Like, think massive, right? But if it's going to be, there's always going to be monetary and non-monetary benefits. Maybe you get some sort of exposure or experience that you would never get otherwise. That's what price do you put on that? And if you're just moving for 10 or 20 grand, to be honest, you're wasting everyone's time. You're wasting your own time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress a little bit. We'll go back to your question. So in the market, the thing we talk about is typically OTE, on target earnings. So if you hit 100% of your target, you get a package, and typically that package is broken down between base and commission. And when we're having OTE, sometimes you hit really aggressive sales roles would be like 50-50 split. So we're saying 50% base, 50% commission, and less aggressive and maybe more relationship focused, like a customer success manager, that's like could be like 80-20. So 80% of your pay is base, and then 20% is commission based. Maybe like you have a renewals target. You might have a renewals target of like, for your book of business, you have to uptick your whole book by 3% maybe. And if you hit that, you get that 20%. So to talk specific numbers, just to make it just really easy for myself. You could have a package of 100K, and 100K, and let's say it's a 70-30 split. So obviously 70 grand is your base pay that you might get. You might get paid typically monthly.
Yep.
Typically is what we see. 30% is your commission, and 30% that commission of 30 grand you would typically get paid quarterly. But every organization is a little bit different, whether they're global, American, or just Australian. But yeah, that's pretty much the high level of
Yeah.
package. Depending on the size of organization you join, you might get a sign-on bonus. You might get equity or share, in other words, shares. The thing to call out with shares before everyone gets too excited is there's something called vesting periods. And you might have to be at the organization for 4 years until you get them, or you might get them gradually
each year.
So just things to learn and understand.
And that's more so when we talk about shares and vesting periods. It's typically technology companies that do that, right?
Yeah,
big tech
or
companies
even like joining. I mean, I see a lot of value in joining, being like the second or third sales employee of a startup. And even just doing that, like, don't get me wrong, you're gonna get paid shit. Like, I don't know, I'm at a guess 60, 70, 80 grand. Well, that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
You can put food on the table and pay rent or whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say that the learning opportunity of that will be incredible. That it might feel shit in the moment, but like especially when you're starting out, it will pay itself in 5-10 years time. Like when you always think big, always think long term, always think strategically. Not just this job, but by getting this job, what do I learn? What muscle? Like everything's a muscle, whether it's physical or non-physical, right? You just got to train that muscle, and then think about, if I go do this job, what's the job after that? I see a lot of, I guess, young people. They might have a knee-jerk reaction. They might jump between jobs for 10 or 20 grand. Like, look, and everybody has their own circumstance and particular personal circumstances. But I always hesitate with that, and I always, when I mentor people, I always advise against that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's very important where there are jobs out there who will, to give you some context, if you're on LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn, by the way, LinkedIn is the place for you to find jobs. Right now.
It is, absolutely.
Seek and all that kind of that shit's dead now.
Yeah.
All right. Like if you're looking for a corporate job, especially if you're in uni, especially you're young in your career, make sure to create a LinkedIn account.
Yep.
Build it up. Create a nice personal brand. It's basically it's like your resume on social media, basically. And people connect with you, right? And this is where you find your jobs. Just a tip for those who don't know already, or who
I like to call it corporate Facebook.
Corporate Facebook, really.
There's rubbish on there as well. But,
there's rubbish. It's like any other social media platform, there's always. But like
from a professional standpoint,
100%.
For sure.
So LinkedIn is most important, right? But back to the point, back to the point of is it the coin or is it the skills that you're going to learn? It's also like recruiters will hit you up and they'll offer you like, hey, 250K, 300K OTE. That sounds great, right? But for some unknown company that you just an obscure company you don't know, but 300K uncapped commissions, and also in sales there's capped commissions, there's uncapped commissions, right?
Oh yeah, there's that as well.
So capped commissions is obviously the commission component can be capped at a certain percentage.
Yep.
Right. But there are some roles in some businesses where it's uncapped, where it's sky's the limit, basically. If you overperform, they'll just pay whatever amount you land on, right? But yeah, some of these businesses who recruit you and they try to give you like 300K OTE, it sounds good, but then you also got to compare it to where am I at right now, or the position I'm at, or compare this company to another company. Where am I going to learn more? Right? Is it worth joining a startup and taking that equity instead, and the low salary, but learning how to run a business properly, learning consistency, grind, learning how to own things more than you should, taking ownership on things, long-term thinking, how to understand capital raising is a big one as well. If that's your thing, right? You want to do startup. So the lesson is don't think too much about the coin, because in sales, everyone's going to throw these massive OT numbers at you when they try to recruit you, but you gotta think, where am I at right now? What's my current skill set? Can I do this role? Am I gonna crash and burn?
Sure.
Right? Do I have to be patient, just stay in my role, learn more, because I feel like there's still more for me to learn as well before I jump into another role just because of coin. So that's the most important thing, right? Sales is a high-paying place, but at the same time, don't just be fully focused on the coin.
I would say the side thing is, like, sure, there's no degrees or universities doing sales, but I think now more than ever, there's lots of, online courses or through digital, media that there's people that are doing like sales coaching, and we've been beneficiaries of that. Like we've learned a lot from John Barrows, for example, and you got to be hungry to learn for sure. I would say a big, like we were talking about before, curiosity is a really important trait, as well as a few other things like resilience and having really thick skin, and not getting upset when 10 people say no, and then when we hang up, we just screaming at each other, screaming in the pillow like our mate Levan. But I will say that, like, you gotta, like, big fan of Simon Sinek. He talks about, if anyone, we can probably put the link up, but often people focus on what, there's a concentric, these circles, but what, how, and then why, and just focusing on with why, and thinking about, like, how do you make decisions? Why is money important to you? Is it important to you? I will say, and this is the point I'm trying to make, I will say in sales, money or economic value has to be probably a top 5 value of yours or priority of yours to give you fuel to actually want to do sales. 100%. If money's not important to you, don't do sales. You'll lose your mind. Right. Getting all sort of like stressed out. So,
because like in sales, right, it's all on targets. That's why economic value. If you value money and finance and that kind of stuff, then you gotta understand that the way that that's the way we break down what compensation looks like.
Yep.
But the way for you to earn that commission is based on revenue targets, right? So. Just for everyone to know, like the way that you're compensated is yes, but at the target for you to even get 100% of that, let's say 100K package and there's 70-30, for example, that 30 is that 30K. For you to hit that 30K, to get that 30K at the end of the year, you have to hit 100% of your revenue target. If you don't hit your revenue target 100%, you're missing. Like some companies, they even fucking pay you the goddamn commission. At the end of the year. Some companies,
or especially when a startup, maybe they pay you once they get paid.
Yeah.
And what happens if your customer doesn't pay you? You're fucked.
Right? Some companies, that's a caveat as well. Some companies pay like 92% of your commission or whatnot, or 100%. But some companies just don't pay you at all, right? So that's the thing to keep in mind. But like most companies, typically most of the time, the way that you hit your compensation is based on a revenue target. So they give you a target of, let's say, $1 million that year. You have to figure out, how am I going to hit $1 million? How am I going to bring $1 million of net new revenue to this business, right? So we're going to digress a little bit, but let's talk about, you got $1 million, you got $1 million target, just to show the people how do you approach this target? How do you work backwards from there? And what kind of, because at the end of the day, it's running your own business, right? At the end of the day, if you're not doing sales, and you want to you'll be an entrepreneur. You have, let's say this year I want to make $1 million in revenue. Yeah. Right. You have to have good systems in place. You have to have organizations. You have to put in the right people, right? So, personally for you, like everything, like let's say you had a $1 million target as a salesperson. How would you go about that? What's your way of thinking here?
That's a great question. I'll ask you a question back. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, man. You go for the legs first, and you go for the
So, I mean, if I was, whether this is like talking as a salesperson or as a business owner, let's say I've got I commit to the business, because it is running your own business, right? Maybe one thing I will say, good salespeople know their fucking numbers. They know their numbers inside and out. They know where they're sitting at any point, being aggressive any point in time, but at least every week they know where they're sitting for the year or where they're sitting for the quarter, or they know how many calls they've made, or how many meetings they've booked, or how many opportunities they created, or how many net new customers or logos are they engaged with, right? I do want to dispel a myth where people think, salespeople, they're extroverted, they know how to talk, and that makes them a good salesperson. That's not true. There's killer salespeople, sharks out there, where they're fucking introverted, but they're amazing listeners. They're analytical. They have the EQ or the awareness to pick out things of what's important and what's not important to a customer. when you're talking, like I'm an energetic kind of salesperson, as we all know.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I have to think about like how do I mirror and match a customer, or it's not. I should stop saying customer, the other person, because I like to personally have a very human element, because it's really important to be like how you empathetic, how do you have tact, and that's a real skill, and that takes a lot of practice. It's going into the gym. And so, yeah, I just want to make a point around some myths around potentially sales. People think, oh, you have to be extroverted like me. But to answer your question around how do I chunk this down? So I like to do a bit of scenario analysis. I like to, if I want to hit 1 million, what's my stretch target? Let's say 3 mil, or 1.5 times, or 2 times, or 3 times.
What's the stretch target, just for people?
My personal stretch target?
What's the stretch target?
Oh, okay. Stretch target is... You get told a number, but you're like, I want to actually work out, and this is what I've actually done in my new or current role. I want to work out, well, what does, if I hit 150%, what does that look like? How much do I get paid? I've got I just use, everyone has I use Gmail, Google. I just use a Google sheet. It's free. I just do the calcs. I work out if I hit 150% of my target. So I know my target. If I hit 150%, how much do I get paid? If I hit 200%, how much do I get paid? If I hit 300%, how much do I get paid? Yeah. I did I think it was like 200% or something. I actually realized, that's actually really hard for me to hit and unrealistic. You always want to stretch target, but when it's unrealistic, actually, I'll say what I think, and then I'll challenge myself on the spot. So when it's unrealistic, unachievable, you won't get out of bed hungry for it, right? Yeah. But to really have a bit of a challenger, The Challenger Sale, by the way, great book. If you want to start getting into sales, that's a book I'd read. Or just Google the summary. It's a good start. It's to have a challenger or contrarian mindset. It's like, fuck, what happens if I only had half the year to do this? Because you've got to think about, how do I hack this number? How do I hit 10 times this revenue? And if you do bring in, 3 times, 10 times revenue, of your target, you will be a sales god. You will be a rock star. Yeah. The question is like, how do I, in our old work, your workplace, my old workplace, we always talk about how do we get achieve non-linear goals or growth. How do we do things in a scalable way? So really, there's 2 ways to do it. You're doing stuff by yourself, but then is there other stuff that you can leverage? Is there marketing? What's the marketing machine look like? What does your partner network or your network look like? Can other people sell for you? It obviously depends on what kind of organization you're joining. That will dictate a lot of, is there already an existing team or ecosystem, or is there none of that? Because there's only one of you at the end of the day. And do you want to do 1,000 calls or 10,000 calls? How on earth are you going to do 1,000 or 10,000 calls a week even, right? So yeah, you got to really whiteboard this. So thinking about your target, stretch target, then breaking it down into chunks. So typically we think about things in quarters. Do you work to a calendar year or a financial year? Calendar year being December end, financial year is typically in Australia June end. And how do you break it down into quarters, then months, then thinking about, well, who is your target customer? Who is your target business? Or it could be a consumer. Then thinking about which kind of personas do you want to talk to? Which kind of people? It's defining who are your buyers? Who's actually going to buy from you? Who's willing? And when we say that, who's actually thinking about the keeping the end in mind and working backwards? Who's going to firstly pay your bills? And that person that pays your bills is most likely going to be the person that signs it. And then with that person signing it, is he or she the person that's actually going to use or use your product or service? Yes or no? It's a bit of a decision tree, right? And then working backwards from that, it's like, well, then who are the stakeholders or people I need to speak to? Is it a head of role? Is it a GM? Is it technical? Is it non-technical? And sometimes maybe if you can't get through to these people, these decision makers, then you probably just have to go down the organizational chart. Oh, actually, I need to start speaking to these users to find out a little bit more about how they're using technology in their marketing team, maybe, as an example. Sorry, we're going into a bit of detail, but yeah, I'm thinking about quarter, thinking about months. In that, a year, it can be a bit seasonal. Like in Australia, we're a fucking lazy country. Nothing happens in December and January.
Yeah, Q4, October, November, December, no one's doing nothing.
Yeah, all us Aussies or bogans are out there having a barbie and then at the beach. So just being mindful, like, well, where does your target, people, where do they play? When do they work? When do they not work? Do they just do 9 to 5? Or is it better to catch them outside of those hours? Or you want to be tripping over opportunity. In my opinion, like, do they go to business events on Saturday morning? Go to those events, go network, all that sort of stuff. Sorry, I'm obviously digressing. But back on your thing. So thinking about which quarters, and then quarters, then months, then maybe you have to write off that quarter. Like, I think of my year as, even though we have 12 months, everyone has 12 months. Everyone has the same time as well, by the way.
It's really 6 months.
You really got to be thinking about 6 months. What activity, whether that's inbound or outbound, like leads or prospecting, that you can do.
Prospecting is to reach out to customers, for those who don't know.
Yeah, and when we're talking about prospecting, like kind of like looking for gold with a little, gold
shovel
and stuff.
Yeah.
But then you might put some smarts, but you need to definitely, like, I'm definitely, and I get killed by analysis paralysis. I'm an overthinker. One thing I really learned in the last 2 or 3 years is, man, you got to, once you've done just enough thinking, you got to just take action. Yeah. Sales is taking action. Yeah. But you just got to be a little bit careful. Just do a little bit of thinking before you take action. Otherwise, you're going in there with a shotgun and you blow both legs off,
Yeah, there's also a saying, like Stephen Bartlett says it. He's like, over planning is a killer to productivity.
Yeah, love it.
You just gotta execute and you figure. Sometimes you gotta figure shit through as well. That's it. But it sounds to me like you kind of break down, things by, you work it backwards. You got $1 million target. You put a stretch target because that's then, how do I overachieve? You always got to think, how do I overachieve? For 2 reasons. One, you want to overachieve because you want to get paid more than you are told. And second is also, you want to have a stretch target in place because it gives you a buffer.
Yeah,
it gives you a buffer because some deals might not close. Some deals might get pushed out. Some of these customers might just ghost you and never speak to you ever again. But because you put that target as, let's say, I got 1 mil, but I'm gonna try to get 1.3 mil. Yep. Right. If I lose that 300K in pipelines is basically the amount of deals I have in place. Yep. I still can hit my 100%. I get my full commission. That acts as a buffer.
So
right?
if to make it numbers a bit more real, so I guess everybody understands it. So let's say I've got $1 million target. Let's say my stretch goal is 50% more than that. So in other words, 150%. So I've got a 1.5 mil target, right? And we're saying, let's write off 1 quarter in the year. I've got 3 quarters. So in each quarter, 1.5 mil divided by 3 is 500K. I need to work out, how do I bring in 500K, as in revenue through the door, as in customer pays me, not just a contract, customer pays me, or the business, we invoice and the customer pays me 500K. And then you go working sort of back, now we're focusing on just the quarter, right?
Yep.
Now then we're thinking, okay, I need 500K revenue to land. Do you want to be 3 times that to create your overall pipeline? So it could be 3, depending on what business it is. It could be 3 times, it could be 5 times, it could be 6, it could be 10. I typically hear 3 to 6. So 5 times, let's use a 5 times multiplier to work out my pipeline. 5 times 500K will be $2.5 million. I need to have 2.5 million in my pipeline at different stages, as you were talking about. So think of stages as what's the probability or degree of someone actually buying. Yep. So I got to think, 2.5. Then I got to think about how much does a customer. Do we need to finish up? Oh, we're okay.
Almost. We can wrap up in a bit, but yeah.
Yeah. So 2.5 million. I got to work out. Let's just say. each customer spends about 100K on average. So 2.5 divided by 100K.
Yeah.
That's going to be, now my maths is fucking retarded. I'm guessing it's 25 or something. Customers I need to be speaking to.
Yeah. Basically,
But anyway,
that's the system, right? You always got to think sales is a business, right?
Yeah.
It's running your own business. How do I hit my revenue? And how do I put the systems in place, break your revenue number by chunks, put it down in quarters,
Yeah.
and figure out the mechanisms in place. And this is where you think about the scale. Where can I do it, or who can I get to sell with me as well, or who do I can leverage as a channel or as an affiliate to help you get to that number. I guess in terms of just to finish it up, right? How do you get into sales? Like, what's the best advice for young people out there? How do you start your journey or start getting into sales?
Great question. Firstly, self-study. Go learn. There's YouTube. There's loads of shit out there. Firstly, spend your own time learning. Go out of your way to learn. Go to and hitting the pavement. Go to as many networking events as possible. Outreach to people. But when you do all of this, always come with some sort of offering value up front first. What insight can you offer? I think that's just a approach that people should be taking. Because why am I reaching out to you? I want to buy you a coffee, but are you saying like, is my time just worth $3? Oh, well, it's like coffee's like $5 now.
Yeah.
Is my time just worth $5 to you? But I'd say, think about maybe you've noticed some trends and you can communicate and offer value to somebody, and maybe that could be a 15-minute meeting, or that could be an hour meeting. If people like you, they'll catch up again. We're all human, so
like 100%.
That's probably my high-level guidance.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you, man. For a career where there's no official channel, or pathway from university or anything like that, the best tool for you is definitely networking, right? And you can do networking in person, but the best way you can find people is LinkedIn. Just make a LinkedIn, right? And
Meetup.com. There's all sorts. Actually, LinkedIn has a lot of events as well.
Yeah. Just attend these events and meet people.
There's a lot of free ones.
Register for them, and also reach out to salespeople. And just hit them up like, I'm interested in a career in sales. Can I sit down with you to understand a little more about your role and what you do and what's every day look like? And how can you help me understand, how can I get there?
Actually, a really good way to think about it is ask yourself, what products or services do you love using? And start looking at those businesses.
The ultimate thing is to be curious, right? Like,
100%.
you got to be curious about the customer. You got to be curious about the problems you're trying to solve. You got to be curious, and you got to love the product that you sell. So if start from that. What are you passionate about? What would you like to sell? And then go find those people in that industry via LinkedIn or any other networking event that you can find, and go make some friends. And that's how you get into sales.
Nice. 100%.
That's it. All right, man. Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. There's still a lot to unpack in sales. So much to unpack, man. Like, we got to talk about career progression and career journey and different types of roles, but that's for another time. We definitely hit us up. Where can we find you, Anthony? where can we find you so people can hit you up?
AnthonyMac.com.au. That's a good question. I haven't really sort of thought about that. I guess people could just add me on LinkedIn. But we'd love, as a next step, we'd love to hear from the audience what questions, maybe we need to create a web page or something, what resonates with people, or what do people want to know more about. That will probably guide us. And, maybe we'll run an event or, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Anthony Mac. So, Anthony, and then his last name is Mach on LinkedIn. So hit him up, know to shout out.
If you can find me.
If you can find him. But look, feel free to send through questions as well on Den of Truth, on our Instagram account, and we'll definitely get Anthony and myself to answer some questions that you might have. But stay tuned for next time. And thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right, man. Cool.
Cheers.
Yeah.